So first, briefly, what is so special about POPs in article that we have a special program on it? Well, managing POPs in articles is a challenge because many of the POPs under the convention are banned, at least their production are banned. But what that means is they've been used in the past, and now we are left with articles on the market in your home that contain these POPs still. And under the convention, parties have to identify these articles and find a way of managing them in an environmentally sound manner once they become waste. In the course of this presentation, you will, of course, understand, I'm sure you already know, but you will get to see that identifying these POPs is quite a challenge for many countries in terms of technology and capacity. And of course, then the sound management of the waste themselves is rather difficult. So there have been 2 programs under the convention, or initiated by the Secretariat, called POPs in Articles and POPs-Free program. In many ways, they are interlinked, and because when you're addressing POPs in articles, what you are doing is to find ways to manage the use and the waste disposal for those POPs for which you have registered exemptions and acceptable purposes. Eventually, though, once you have put in place the phase out of these POPs, you will end up in a situation where this is no longer necessary, and you will end up with POPs-free products. So now I will come to the activities that are being undertaken under these programs, and I would like to emphasize that this work has been possible with the financial assistance of the government of Norway, of Germany, and of GIZ. And it is being led by the Stockholm Convention Regional Center in China, who is doing some research work, and also, as you will see later on in the presentation, leading the publication on this work. So up to now, there has been some scoping study on what kind of activities are important for POPs in articles. And this has led to a pilot project on the sound management of these POPs, and to develop case studies on phase-out opportunities in emerging countries, which China is an example. Then there has already been an expert meeting on this topic, also held in China, which eventually will lead to a publication. So here's a picture of the participants at the expert meeting. And here is an outline of the publication. Roland Weber in the last presentation will tell you more in details about the content. Now, in terms of implementation, this is the time frame. We are already in October, and there's a slight delay as in the production of the publication, but it should soon be ready, the first draft at least. And once we have compiled internal comments, we will organize an online meeting on this topic. And everyone who's present here or who's interested are invited to participate in this online meeting and contribute to enhancing the publication. After the comments have been taken on board, then we will reissue this document and eventually share it with everyone. So with that, I will bring you to the second presentation by Mrs. Chen Yuan from the Stockholm Center, Stockholm Convention Regional Center in China.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Chair. I'm Chen Yuan from BCRC Beijing, and the title of my presentation is New POPs in Articles, Case Study of PBDE and PFOS. Now, this is part of results of projects that are funded by Secretariat. My presentation mainly includes these 4 parts. Now, first is the production and the application of PBDE and PFOS in China. According to our survey, China has never produced octave BDE, and with the impact of the international conventions and the change in market demand, the production of pent-up BDE was thoroughly ceased in 2003 year, and DECA BDE is one most important flame retardant in China, and is producing from the late of 1990s. According to our statistics, there are 15 enterprises in China produce DECA BDE, but up to now, only 4 companies still produce DECA, and the actual annual production capacity is about 23,000 tons. As for the usage of PBDE in China, I just mentioned that DECA BDE is the most important flame retardant in China, and here I just talk about the DECA BDE in China, which is usually used in plastics or polymers such as ABS, HIPS, PC, PP, and rubber, etc. According to the survey data, about 99% of DECA BDE are used in plastics, and the DECA flame retarded plastic, in which about 70% are used in electric and electronic equipment, such as computer, air conditioner, washing machine, TV set, refrigerator, and so on. As for the PFOS, as we all know, China produces PFOS, and here I give the average production of PFOS in 2009 to 2012. It's about 100 to 140 tons annually, and about 30% was export, such as to Brazil. PFOS are mainly used in, so we can look at the the picture right below down, we can see the red and the blue points. This means that PFAS are mainly used in the field of metal plating and firefighting foams. Besides in the metal plating and firefighting foams, PFAS can be used in other fields such as the beds for termites and cockroach. Another important usage is surfactants for oil production. Regarding to the analysis of PVDE and PFAS, as we know, there are many technologies or techniques that can detect the bromine. From the slide, we can see there are such as the XRF, XRT, Raman spectroscopy, and so on. In fact, in this technique, only GIF mass and LC mass is the technique to be used to detect the PVDE. Just now mentioned, the technique just now mentioned are mainly used to detect the bromine. As for the PFAS analysis technique, in China there are two standard methods. Now, these two methods belong to the 2009 system. And we have the equipment and the capacity to analyze PFAS. Now the RCCDD is for rough analysis, and then the LC double mass is used for quantification to detect the PFAS. In this table, the data in this table is results that we detect use our equipment, and some examples such as VF 570, and these examples select from the market. From this table, we can see there are some products that still contain PFAS, and many other products didn't have PFAS. As for the treatment condition status of PVDE containing articles in China, here I list two fields. Now, one is the PVDE containing plastic, which from the e-waste. The in China, we have the old for new policy. According to this policy, we can status the accurate status of the e-waste up to 2011 years. There are about more than 8,000 million units e-waste are collected. The e-waste are only the TV set waste, a washing machine, refrigerator, and air conditioner, and a computer. According to the average content of plastic in this e-waste, we can calculate that about 21 million tons of flame-retardant plastic produced from these 5 e-waste. Now, the other parts that maybe containing PVDE is the printed circuit board, which from e-waste. In China, the PCB is always crushed mechanically, and the polymers is usually incinerated. And in China, there are some alternatives to PFAS. Now, the non-PFAS chrome-based suppressants, there are 2 types of products. Now, the first is a local product, which contains chloride and 16F, and the other type is imported product, just like the right one. Now this slide is shows that number of registered products using such AI. Now the items are the active components, which are used in the product. And this table showed that the items which are the active components used in some products, it shows that the green data showed that the active component is environmental friendly friendly, environmental friendly, and the orange ones a little toxic, and the red one is shows that the active products components are toxic, which are blind POP. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I am very pleased to present some information about a product that should not contain POPs, but it actually does. In 2009, when, just not sure how to change this. Okay, thank you. In 2009, when penta-BDE and octa-BDE were listed in the Stockholm Convention, the congeners you see on the screen were listed, and at the time of the listing, delegates agreed to make a recycling exemption, which would allow articles containing these substances to be recycled. The relevant products that are used are shown here. One is polyurethane foam, which is in which penta-BDE is commonly used, and the other are office equipment electronic products in which octa-BDE was commonly used. IPEN was very concerned about this exemption because we thought this would lead to the proliferation of these POPs in the recycled products, but we decided to investigate, and we asked these questions. The first is whether or not listed substances would be present in a recycled product like carpet padding. And the second is whether there would be any difference between developed and developing countries. The product that we're talking about is shown here on the screen. It's the colorful foam product where you can actually see pieces of foam sort of stuck together in a final product. And it's commonly used underneath carpeting. US, Canada, Europe, and other developed countries. What we did first was, since IPEN is a global network, is we did a marketing survey just to see where this product might be used. It was hard to find it in developing countries, but we were able to find it in developed countries. We screened the samples using X-ray fluorescence, a portable X-ray fluorescence device, to sort of reduce our cost in what would be sent to the laboratory. And then we analyzed for penta-BDE, octa-BDE, and also deca-BDE, and the congeners are shown there on the screen. We ended up testing 26 samples, and you can see the countries here. We did manage to find it in these few developing countries. And the countries listed in yellow were the ones that ended up containing enough bromine to make us think that we should send them for laboratory analysis. So these were the ones that presumptively contained the listed POPs. And these are the results. And what you can see here first is that it was fairly easy to find at least one brominated flame retardant in these samples. In fact, in most of the samples. In addition, penta-BDE and octa-BDE are listed in the convention, and it was easy to find them. You can see the range of concentrations, but it's important to mention that in the Stockholm Convention, there is a low POPs content limit, which determines if a waste falls under the convention requirements. You can think of it as a hazardous waste limit. This limit has not been set yet for these substances, but since they resemble PCBs, we used the provisional limit for PCBs, which is 50 parts per million. And you can see for penta, half the samples exceeded this provisional low POPs content limit. So our view of this is that it's like having hazardous waste in your living room or in a hotel room or office. We also noted that since the product is made of sort of pasted together pieces of foam or melted pieces of foam, that often there was a variation between different samples from the same manufacturer. Now, these data raise some concerns for us about exposure. There is a study that shows that the workers who actually install carpets have a higher body burden of these substances. The POPS Review Committee did a technical review of this process and expressed concerns for exposure in children because the substances are released in dust and children are close to the floor. And then the amount of this material can be substantial. You see here for the U.S., it's a large number of kilograms is currently present in homes and offices. Finally, when the POPS Review Committee did an analysis of the size of the U.S. market versus what they estimated to be the possible health cost, you can see there's a substantial difference there. And they felt that that difference justified actually taking the pains to separate the waste and remove POPs-containing waste before the recycling. As I mentioned, the POPS Review Committee was asked by the COP to do a survey or an assessment of what the consequence of this recycling would be. And they had three main points, which are listed here. The first was that the committee concluded we should stop doing this. And the reason that they said this was because once you recycle, you lose control of the POP, and it becomes present in many other products from which it's very difficult to recover the POP. And then the other interesting feature was that they found that this problem is actually a developed country problem. We're often familiar with the problems of developing countries, but really the review indicated that this is most commonly present in developed countries. It's really a problem. The decision of the subsequent conference of the parties is shown here. The delegates encouraged governments to follow these recommendations and to ensure that the waste would not be exported to developing countries, which often do not have the capability or capacity to manage POPs waste. I'd like to just introduce one other recent publication in study, which is similar to this. This is another recycled product. The picture is shown here, and it's these thermal cups that are used for drinking coffee and tea. When samples from these countries on the screen were examined, in particular the lids of these substances, these products, they found that it was very easy to find flame retardants because they were using recycled plastic in the product. And so deca-BDE and also another flame retardant, TBBPA, was found among others. And you can see the variation in concentrations there. Some of those are quite significant. And in fact, the authors concluded this was actually a violation of EU law. So we have two examples of recycled products that illustrate the problems of recycling a product that contains POP. So in summary, it was unfortunately easy to find a recycled product that contained POPs that are listed in the treaty. The committee concluded that there were concerns over human exposure from this practice and that the recycling exemption should actually end. This will be a topic that comes up at future conferences and parties. Thank you for your attention, and at the correct moment, I'm happy to try to answer any questions.
Joe?
So the next presentation will be on the framing of the publication on POPs in articles and phase-out opportunities. I'm here as a consultant for the Basel Regional Center of China, working together with them, also having my visiting professorship at the Stockholm Convention Center at CUR University. Okay, the objective of the publication is to add understanding on POPs in articles and products generally, to help parties get a simple overview on POPs-free and POPs alternatives, linking to the available materials developed by the POP Reviewing Committee, activities of parties, regional centers, industry, NGOs, and the research community, to update on alternatives where the POP Reviewing Committee is not updating information, for example, on alternatives of POP PDDs, that's finished at the moment for the POP Reviewing Committee. Then to allow an easy update on POPs-free, POPs alternative information. So the idea is that this publication is only in electronic version and will be developed containing links to the reports and resource materials with the option of an easy update when substantial new information, for example, by the POP Reviewing Committee is developed. Here is an overview on the different chapters. Introduction, then the second chapter, snapshot of information on each chemical in articles and products, including PFOS, POP PDDs, lindane, endosulfane, DDT, possibly PCB, and hexabromocyclododecane. Then in chapter 3, on the current status, case studies on POPs-free and POPs alternatives. 4, how can we add more understanding on the use and alternatives of POPs in articles, and 5, on conclusions and recommendations. So, first to chapter 2, the snapshot of information on each chemical in articles and products. As example here to PFOS, Itzoid and PFOS-F. Just to give here a short introduction to the chemical. Then important to have the link on the acceptable purposes and specific exemptions, to have the information available on risk profile, risk management evaluation, attending of the risk management evaluation, and then here below you see more information and links to more information, chemical identity and properties, POP Reviewing Committee recommendations, POPs characteristics of POPs and alternatives, and also the guidance drafts which have been developed by the Stockholm Secretariat. Chapter 3, case studies, current status for the individual POPs. Here it's aimed to have information on alternatives from the POP Reviewing Committee. Already we have available on PFOS, PDDs, endosulfane, lindane, and DDT. Then information on alternatives and approaches of assessment of alternatives other than from POP Reviewing Committee, for example, from other UN organizations, activities, for example, on DDT, from parties, the research community, industry, and NGOs. These case studies might include not only chemical alternatives, but also alternative materials or alternative processes, or also studies on screening of POPs in articles. Just as a case study for the chapter 3, here on PDD alternatives in POPs-free, we have already from the POP Reviewing Committee the report on penta-BD alternative document, which has been developed within the POPRC process. Then we have also the Stockholm Convention PDD by PEP guidance, which has a paragraph on alternatives, so already we can link to UN documents here. But there are more information available, because up to now mainly these UN documents link to substance substitution. There are also the option of second stage like material substitution, or to change in product, go direction of green and sustainable design, for example, activities which we have in the middle. That's the example from the PEP guidance on PBDE from the Stockholm Secretariat, the draft. Here, what you see, these are main use areas, not only of commercial penta-BDE, but also commercial octa-BDE, and some alternatives on halogenated and also non-halogenated flame retardants. The industry is also quite active and quite open with information. What you see here is an overview on non-halogenated flame retardants from industry, which is available in the internet. You see basically all application options of non-halogenated flame retardants from PINFA, also in different sectors of PVDs and hexabromo cyclododecane. On the website, you can go here down to the product selector. I choose here just an example of foams. Then it opens a range of chemicals that are alternatives. You see for what type of application. You get information on GHS labeling and REACH. So basically a very simple overview on alternatives and also more information on that. Here you see an example of a polymer called POPRC-9. This is a polymer meeting flammability standards without the use of any flame retardants. This means material substitution. This was already included in the first POPRC-3 project, so it does not contain PVDs, hexabromo, biphenyl, HBCD or dioxins, but also as the Stockholm Center of Barcelona has evaluated no persistent bioaccumulating or toxic characteristics. Now, no carcinogenic, mutagenic or reproductive characteristic. It has improved burning performance if it burns. That's sometimes a challenge for other halogenated flame retardant plastics. And it has improved recyclability of the product. This means goes to the direction of sustainable production. For hexabromo cyclododecane, we already have 3 case studies on HBCD alternatives. One are chemicals and products, alternatives to the use of flame retardant EPS in buildings, which was provided from the Norwegian government to the POPRC-9 committee. We have currently an activity of the US EPA activity under the Design for the Environment framework, which will be linked when we have a EU-funded subsport project report on specific substances, alternative assessment, hexabromo cyclododecane. So this kind of materials can also be linked to the guidance. And since early this week we have more other relevant new information in the from POPRC-9 Committee 9, which will also be integrated as appropriate. What you see here, the picture, this is the polystyrene in the production, then here in the use in the buildings, and the last picture I have made in the World Bank project in the Philippines, close to a landfill where you see the scavengers are taking out the polystyrene and think that for recycling, and here we really don't know where it ends up. PFAS alternatives, also we have already reference to the work of POPRC-9 committee. We have the guidance on alternative to PFAS and PFAS-F, which is ongoing work and can be linked and updated. We have alternatives for PFAS in open application 2012-2013, and at the moment, based on POPRC-9 committee recommendation in certain applications, COP6 requests parties and observers to provide information on use of PFAS or its alternatives and on quantities of PFAS used for aviation hydraulic fluid, chemical-driven oil production, electric and electronic parts for some color printers and color copy machines. This is actually here a proposal. So the publication can be easily updated with information coming from this process, or reference can be added if the POPRC-9 committee develop a document on it. We come to chapter 4. How can we add more understanding on the use and alternatives of POPs and articles? Here, first I want to come to the challenges. Current lack of data on POPs and articles, no scarce information of PFAS in carpets, aviation hydraulic fluids and so on the presence of PVD, waste and recycling flow, challenges on monitoring of POPs and articles to conclude in an accredited manner on POPs content and on POPs-free, So there is a global lack of standards to measure POPs in articles. There is, from the global electronic industry, approach to develop such a standard. Bernd Hände is here in the audience, in the internet, maybe he can comment on that. Lack of monitoring capacity in developing countries with economies in transition. So we have generally a challenge and the need to develop monitoring, optimizing resources. So here, the involvement of regional centers in monitoring, that was also discussed this morning, what can regional centers do? I think this could be a quite interesting task. Then we have also other monitoring approaches like custom approach, industry approaches, what we at the moment see when countries try to do inventories. For example, Turkey and the Philippines have tried to find these POPs by custom approach, and we see that it's really challenging. Then the guidance will reference to the guidance on the screen with new listed POPs in products and articles. What you see here on the screen, that's the guidance on sampling, screening and analysis of POPs in articles which have been developed. That's a draft from February 2013. So here in the publication we will have a paragraph referring to this monitoring guidance, highlighting some key features of the monitoring guidance. So this monitoring guidance provides guidance on monitoring strategies and screening of POPs content in articles and products in use and in recycling streams. Where available in this guidance, we already have put best practice cases. A selection of these case studies and monitoring of POPs in articles can also be referred in the publication we develop. And at the moment you have seen the Chinese Center have done some screening on PFOS, but also on PBDE. Also this kind of results can come into this. So then we have also approaches of assessment of alternatives in addition to POP reviewing committee. I just want to highlight here three. One is the green screen approach, originally developed from US EPA. That was actually the version what the Chinese Center has used to assess the alternatives of sulfurilamide use in China insecticides. Then we have a nice subsport internet portal supporting practical substitution. Certain POPs alternatives are addressed here and listed. Then we have the Infero project from the European Commission funded project of a prototypical case study on substitution options of brominated flame retardants considering the life cycle. Just one slide on that. You see here in this European project study on environmental compatibility of flame retardants, they have done an assessment of PBDE, HBCD, BFR alternatives in selected applications. The applications include here, for example, printed circuit boards, electronic components, inject mold products, textile coatings. These are areas where also POPs have been used before. They have done hazardous characterization, exposure fate modeling, flame retardant capability studies, risk assessment and impact assessment, so try to do a whole life cycle assessment. Interesting project to link to. And in parallel to this project, Infero has developed a toxicity information on halogenated flame retardants compiled in a review which is peer-reviewed. Then we have already a first feedback from stakeholders, a comment from the first exchange on the outline of the publication with some of the regional centers and the stakeholders which have participated in our workshop in late August in China. So there is one comment was suggestion to include a paragraph on unintentional POPs. This issue I had to think how to do that, so I have looked into the UN documents and I have found that Japan government has given an input on HCB in certain pigments at COP4 and 5, suggestion on BAT levels for HCB in these pigments, and also I have found in the Stockholm Convention Dioxin Toolkit, the 2013 version, BAT category for 2,4-D and derivatives with BAT levels for dioxin content. But we have here the question, at what level is an article product POPs free? Okay, so we come to the conclusion and recommendation of the last chapter, that's chapter 5. Here also recommendation which have been developed by the POP reviewing committee in respect to alternatives to POPs. For example, PFOS will be included, recommendation of specific applications you have made, recommendations on regarding information gaps, recommendation on future work. Then we have some recommendation conclusion from the workshop of the POP3 alternative workshop this August in China. Here the delegates, mainly from developing countries, have highlighted the need of monitoring of POPs in articles in developing countries, have highlighted assessment of the recycling flows of products and related risk, kind of risk cycle, and more research studies on the life cycle of POPs and the other alternatives. And in addition, we will have elements for consideration from exchange with stakeholders, including you as parties, that will compile in the frame of developing the publication. Finally, food for thought. That's Professor Miriam Diamond from Toronto University. That's her salad service. So she's working on flame retardants, so she has screened her kitchen with the XRF, have found 90 ppm of bromine in her salad service, have analyzed them, mainly DKBDE, but also partially debrominated, so about 90 ppm DKBDE and 300 ppm lead. So just by using it in the salad, by extraction with your oil and vinegar over the time, it might go into the food chain. So if you are interested here in the POP Reviewing Committee at the moment in the bioaccumulation in the food chain, but for the PBDs we have many shortcuts which are very relevant. So when we have here assessment of recycling flows of products and related risks, of course this is also for developing countries, but as Joe, you highlighted with your presentation, it's also for us, the industrial countries, and it's very important to do screenings. Thank you for your attention.